webinar on Precodes for the winter Keystone exams for the 2016-17 school year. Today I will be presenting with Teresa Stafford from Division of Data Quality. I'm in the Division of Performance Analysis and Reporting, and we are responsible for the PIMS training, the attribution map, and all accountability and reporting functions. There's contact information at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to email me. The Q&A part of this presentation may not be able to answer all your questions, so I ask that you email me if you have any questions that deal with specific issues that apply only to your LEA. And some questions require some additional research, so please email me and I'll get back to you promptly. Okay, I'm going to stop here for just a second. Apparently my screen is sharing. Okay. All right, this presentation is being recorded and it can be downloaded from this webpage, which is the PAS, or Pennsylvania Accountability Systems webpage. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of this session, and we will have let folks know through pen links and email broadcasts. Division of Performance Analysis and Reporting is part of the Bureau of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction. We're responsible for collecting and reporting assessment data for the PSSAs and Keystones. The PIMS trainings are listed for assessment and accountability on the PIMS calendar. The agenda for today, as you can see, we're first going to talk about timelines, due dates, and templates, as well as business rules, and then some data collection details with field information, and then a little bit about reporting. All right, so who submits data to PIMS? Any entity that teaches a Keystone-related course must assess the student in the Keystone subjects as end-of-course exams. Keystone courses are designated in PIMS by the LEA as trigger courses. Designating a course as an end-of-course Keystone course is a local decision, and it's not mandated by PDE. LEA should look at the content standards for the Keystone course before designating the course in PIMS so that they can ensure students have the requisite knowledge to demonstrate proficiency in the Keystone exams. Students taking the Keystone exams must be uploaded to PIMS during the internal snapshot date. There's a quick note that I want to make, and that is although your online testers don't need a pre-code label, it's a good idea to submit those students anyway. This is because if that data file gets sent to DRC, it will include all of your students, and it gives you some flexibility. So, for example, if your student or your student can't take the online test, or there's a problem with your system where the student is not able to take the test online and becomes a paper pencil tester, you can still set up test sessions for the student and have the ability to go through the DRC system to upload, it's uploaded in the PIMS file, and you can still get a pre-code label generated for that student, and that would mean that the booklet would not have to be hand bubbled. So some important issues that came up last year that we think that might help you this year. It's important to work with your SIS vendor to make sure they can deliver the data that's required for the internal snapshot. Hopefully this has already been done. It's just me telling you that this should happen because we had some problems in the past. Although it's not a requirement, PDE highly recommends that LEAs use the sandbox as a tool in order to test data against the DQE rules. This is intended to save you time when uploading the data to PIMS. Last year, LEAs who waited until the last day to upload data and encountered problems, we were just not able to meet the deadline. Since there's no extensions for the internal snapshot, these LEAs were unable to submit data for the upload, which meant that they couldn't get pre-code labels and they had to hand bubble booklets. So we strongly encourage LEAs to update data in the sandbox ahead of time, but want to be clear that you must load the data into PIMS in order for student data to be included in the snapshot. The deadline for submitting data for this collection is 12 p.m. or noon on October 5th, 2016. At noon, PIMS will shut down temporarily to take an internal snapshot, and once that internal snapshot is taken and the system's reopened, any data updated after the snapshot date will not be available in the DRC system. This means while PIMS is shut down to take the internal snapshot, data can no longer be uploaded. Because this is an internal snapshot, data is frozen in time and extensions can't be granted. Your data submission during internal snapshot is important when the LEA reviews data during the attribution window later in the year. And I want to point out that PDE uses data submitted by LEAs in Cognos production reports when verifying decisions about attribution. Some LEAs were updating data in PIMS after the internal snapshot date to run Cognos verify reports to show that data appears correctly in PIMS or in their SIS. They already know Cognos verify reports reflect changes in real time, but production reports are static and report data at a specific point in time, which is data that is reported as of the internal snapshot date, and for this collection it's October 5th. So unlike a data collection, internal snapshots do not have time for a corrections window. Therefore, it's important to make sure your data is right by the due date. There are pre-snapshot verification reports that are available in the sandbox and Cognos verify reports prior to October 5th to help you upload or correct your data. One change from last year is that PDE is no longer requiring ACS for the Precode internal snapshot. So that includes the PSSA and the Keystone Precodes. The only time Precode ACSs will now be required will be for the PSSA and Keystone accountability internal snapshots in April and May of this year, of the next year, this school year. All right, to accurately submit Precode data, LEAs have a few options this year. Excuse me. And you can decide what works best for you. So first, LEAs can identify the students who are taking the winter Keystone exams and only upload those students in field 214. Pardon me. So students can be uploaded into field 214, and that's option 1. The second option is LEAs can choose to upload students who are taking the winter, spring, and summer Keystones all at one time. Some LEAs have told us this saves them time in the long run, so this is an option. But if you choose this option, please note that field 214 is used for winter Keystone exams, 215 for spring, and 216 for the summer precodes. And all of these fields are only used for the purposes of precode labels. We don't use these fields for accountability, which are internal snapshots in April and May. And lastly, LEAs have the option to code all students in fields 214, 215, and 216 with E, which indicates the student is taking all 3 subjects of the Keystone exams. This option is acceptable because the LEA still has to go to set up test sessions for individual students by subject. So putting in a code, you can put in a code other than Z. Z means not participating in the Keystone exams, will allow the student to be included in the internal snapshot that will go into DRC's eDirect system. Next, there are 3 templates that will be used to be updated, will need to be updated and uploaded in Collection Window 6 for the internal snapshot. The Collection Window 6 is open all year, so LEAs have the flexibility to upload data as often as they like and keep it up to date. For the PSSA and Keystone exams, LEAs will use Collection Window 6 for Precode and accountability internal snapshots. The 3 templates that we're using are student, programs fact, and school enrollment. So please start early and make sure that your data passes the DQE checks by the deadline. This is an assessment and accountability data flow. It begins, well, they're numbered, so numbers 1 through 5 deal with the pre-code process, and 6 through 8 deal with accountability. So it begins with the LEA submitting data to PIMS, and PIMS takes an internal snapshot of the statewide and sends the file to DRC. DRC then loads the data into their eDirect system that allows LEAs to set up test sessions and order booklets. Then DRC sends booklets and precodes to the LEA, and after the assessment is administered, the LEA returns the test booklets and materials to DRC to be scored. That takes us to or step 6, or number 6. Once the booklets are scored, the data is loaded into eDirect for LEAs to review their data, and this begins the accountability section. So during the attribution, the District Assessment Coordinator, DAC, may use PIMS reports and the LEA Student Information System to review the accuracy of the school's student data file. It's important that PIMS administrators know that PDE bases decisions, attribution decisions in PIMS data use templates in Cognos production. Excuse me. Cognos Verify reports will not be used. Once attributions are completed and data is finalized by PDE, no more changes will be allowed in the accountability file. And that is what is used to calculate performance and participation rates and reported to the U.S. Department of Education and the School Performance Profile. DRC sends assessment data results to the LEA, to eMetric, and then also back to PIMS. So PIMS administrators should make sure that the data submitted is accurate in PIMS production and in their LEA SIS. These reports are available to LEAs. Also in eMetric data interaction system and loaded into PIMS. Please note, I want to make sure that everyone understands that eMetric does not have accountability data. It only shows data by administration. Next, we'll talk about the business rules to unduplicate student records. This unduplicating process shows that LEAs will receive, or which LEAs will receive, the pre-code labels if 2 or more LEAs submit data to PIMS. So it's important here that you understand that although LEA data is uploaded successfully into PIMS and passes the DQ edit checks, records may still be rejected because they don't meet the current business rules. And these business rules also help PDE to unduplicate records. So students must be in grades 3 through 12, and their first and last name should not be missing. Special characters in a student's name except dashes and apostrophes should be removed. The student's birth date is no later than January 1st, 1995, no later than December 31st, 2011, and that basically indicates that the student is school age. The student's school entry date, district entry date, state entry date are either before or in the current school year. We found that there were some data discrepancies in 2015-16 where LEA submitted data in these 3 fields dated for future dates. So, for example, in 2015-16, school entry dates were coded in 2017 and 18 and so on. This problem was detected with accountability data where schools showed students in PIMS that were not in the accountability file. With dates listed in the future, students were not flagged as FAY or full academic year, and therefore they did not appear in the accountability file. This year, changes have been made to make sure that PIMS, so that the entry dates cannot extend past the current school year. After applying rules 1 through 5, the PA Secure ID can only be reported by 1 LEA. So if a student is reported by 1 or more occupational or part-time CTCs and 1 other LEA of any type, the record submitted by the other LEA will be used. If a record is submitted, or a student record is submitted by a comprehensive or full-time CTC and 1 or more school districts or charter schools, the part-time or the comprehensive full-time CTC will receive their Precode label. If a student is reported at an IU and one or more school district charter schools, the record submitted by the IU will be the one that's used. If a charter school or one or more school districts submit the record submitted by the charter school will be the one that's used. And if an APS or one or more school districts or charter schools submit a record for the same student, the one that is submitted by the APS. And then the last two, if a PRRI and one or more school district or charter school submits a record for the same student, the record submitted by the PRRI will be used. And lastly, the student, if they are reported by multiple school districts or charter schools, the record that we use is the district or charter school with the latest district entry date. Talking about next, the data collection and important fields that we feel are important for this internal snapshot. So just to review what an internal snapshot looks like, this is an overview and basically shows the blue arrows simply state that data has to be submitted by noon on October 5th, and also it must be corrected or, based on your pre-snapshot verification report that is corrected before noon on October 5th. So PDE begins the process by reminding LEAs that the internal snapshot is coming up, and it's also listed in the PIMS calendar. Next, we ask that LEAs upload the templates to ensure that data passes the DQE checks, and we have pre-snapshot reports to ensure that data is accurate. Then PIMS locks down, and after 12 p.m. on October 5th, and takes the internal snapshot, and then it reopens after it opens the internal snapshot when it reopens, then LEAs would be able to submit data again, but not for that collection. The internal snapshot details basically start with the formatting criteria, which is the student, which what I call is the student makes up the student, and then the demographics, participation, program participation, and school enrollment are part of that student. So if we begin with the formatting criteria, it's very important they are correct because this is how students are linked to test results later in the year. This is why there's so much emphasis on getting these fields right. The formatting criteria are first name, last name, birth date, and PA Secure ID. Most of these fields are now part of the DQE rules when the LEA submits data. And this year, DQE will check last name, birth date, and PA Secure ID. And the first three letters of the first name. And as well as some other DQE rules such as grade. An important note, PIMS will accept all special characters, but DRC does not. So first and last name can only have alpha, numeric, hyphen, and apostrophe. All other special characters will be removed. And this may become a problem when you're trying to identify a student if the student does not match the formatting criteria. You may have submitted a student with special characters in PIMS, but they're not going to show up in DRC system. So please be aware that students who do not match on these formatting criteria will be loaded as unmatched for the attribution window, and this will require your DAC to manually match students. To help reduce the work on the back end, which is the attribution window, please make sure first name, last name that's entered into PIMS is listed on some type of official document, like a birth certificate, a passport, baptismal record, whatever was used at the time of enrollment, and that it matches the same name that is listed in the PA Secure ID system. Please make sure that the student's PA Secure ID is unique to the student. Students with two IDs or two students sharing one ID have to be resolved in the attribution window, which is typically 3 to 4 days long, and that leaves us little time to research and sort out the IDs. Please make sure birth date is accurate, and to give you a quick example about the importance of birth date, last year a school was missing birth date on the booklets and failed to bubble it in, This dropped all the students into the unmatched file for the school to review. In this case, the school failed to go in and match all these students, and we're talking hundreds, and therefore what happened is it affected the school's data that was reported on the SPP. So with student demographics, there are several things in the student template that we're going to talk about. The first are listed here. The demographics for students, as you know, are embedded in Precode labels. If the student can't be matched using the four matching criteria, the student record has to be matched manually to their test record by the LEA. So using student demographics can help LEAs identify unmatched students. Demographics include students who have an IEP, are English learners, or economically disadvantaged. Also, race and ethnicity is a good way to match a student record in the attribution system. The student template here, we have fields 98, 99, and 109, and I think I've explained the importance of getting these fields right. School entry date cannot be beyond the school year, and it should be on or before the date of the school enrollment template. District entry date can't be beyond the school year, and state entry date is the state entry date, whenever the time the student enters the state. Fields 117 and 165. 117, basically, that is the district code of residence, and it's listed in Appendix N in Volume 2. If the students are designated as 1305 or 1306, without a known district, you use the 9s. And in Field 165, location code of residence, if the district of residence doesn't have a school within the student's grade level, you use the quad zeros. The special ed fields, the two here listed, are kind of work together. Field 38 is special education, which describes a student who's part of the special education program. This is this field can have a yes, a Y, or an E, meaning yes, or E, meaning exited IEP less than 2 years. So if that is Y or E, then in field 167, special education referral, the student must be Y or yes, as long as field 38 had a Y or an E. Assessment participation code. So it's important that LEAs understand that there should be very few instances where code I would apply. One case is if a student with an IEP is being educated in an IU, the school district would upload the student as an I, and the IU would load the student as an A or B. During the PDE's unduplicating process, as discussed in previous slides we just went over, the IU's records would be used and the precodes would go there. Last year, there were over 173,000 records that were coded with I in grades 3 through 8 across the LEAs. We're not sure why this happened. It's possible that the SIS issue, that it was an issue with your student information system that defaults all students to be coded as I in field 212. Unless it's changed by the LEA, it gets loaded into PIMS using I. We learned that from a school district that a power school changed the default setting from I to B, and the LEA would now then go in and only change the students to be I if it was necessary. Since this issue was identified, the plan moving forward is that PDE will be monitoring the number of students coded as I in field 212, and we'll be sending a letter to the superintendent or CEO of the identified LEAs, informing them that the number of I codes that are being used in the LEA. So, if you have 100 I's, we would let your superintendent know that Field 67, student status, that's Appendix L in Volume 2. We would like if you could complete if the student is homeschooled or court-placed or agency-placed. Program stack template deals with Title I information, and we need that for federal accountability for the designation. So this is where The LEAs inform PDE of the Title I information, and that's codes 015 to 018, and it excuse me, it's included and important in precodes because it's included as part of the student's demographics that get embedded in the precode label. The PSSA and Keystone internal snapshots, you can have students who are either included in a school-wide program or targeted assistance for being reported as Title I and program staff. Data from school enrollment is used to determine the students who will be included in the internal snapshot. The only students who are included in field 212 with an A, B, C, D, E, F, or G will be included in the file that goes to DRC. Please be sure to keep this template up to date. It will become very important in the accountability snapshot in May and June 2017 and attribution windows in June and July 2017 in DRC's eDirect system. PDE again makes decisions based on school enrollment because there is an audit table, PAR, meaning performance analysis and reporting, can determine when the student record was modified and also see where the student was enrolled throughout the whole school year. During the 2015-16 attribution window, very few requests to remove a student from a school's accountability file were granted. LEAs must remove students if they leave their LEA. We work with child accounting and have been told that a school receives funding for enrolled students. In many cases, this makes the LEA responsible for the education of the student and therefore being attributed the student for. So if a student left, did not take the assessment, but remained enrolled and received the attribution, it will negatively impact the school's participation rate. In order to include the student in the precodes for the winter Keystone's internal snapshot, field 214 has to be coded with some other code other than Z, which is not participating in any assessment in the student template. So as we mentioned earlier, the LEA has a few options on how to submit the student record. Once the student is in the internal snapshot, the student will appear in the DRC system, and students can then be placed into test sessions by the LEA. Even if you submit all students, only those in field 214 in the student template indicated as currently enrolled in the LEA and school enrollment template will be included in the file that goes to DRC. Last, we're going to talk about the reports that are produced in PIMS as a result of the data that you submit to PIMS. These reports are available in the sandbox and can be used test your data before it's loaded into production and the internal snapshot is taken. So there are verification reports and extract warning reports here for you. These reports reflect data that is loaded into Cognos production. You have the pathway there. There are, again, extract warnings as also the preliminary or pre-snap information verification. All assessments and accountability internal snapshots are going to be in collection window 6. And here this just shows that you can upload, update, and delete records throughout the school year. And you can keep it as updated as often as you like. These are some resources that are available on the PAS website or webpage. Also, this is where the trainings, this webinar that's recorded will be loaded, as well as the PowerPoint will be loaded here on this webpage. This is our contact information. And that concludes the presentation. And if you would like to submit your questions in the question area, just give us a couple minutes to get all that together, and then we'll be back online and go through the questions.